Association has just held a media briefing on the strategic importance of the oil industry. It's said to be an important sector which, if sufficiently invested in, could create jobs and boost the fortunes of the local economy. And that's true for the wider African continent as well. Well, to discuss the highlights from the briefing, I'm joined by Avhapfani Tshifularo. He's the Executive Director at SAPIA. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us. Now, you commissioned a study conducted by FTI Consulting to look at the oil industry's impact on the South African economy. What were some of the key takeaways from the report?
So, good afternoon. What the study has confirmed is that the industry plays a strategic critical role in the economy. And in particular, when it comes to the growth, investment, and employment of the whole economy. And some of the interesting facts that came out of that study is that, based on 2019 figures, the industry has contributed about 139 billion rand to the GDP, which equates to 2.7% of the GDP in 2019. And if we look at the employment figures, the industry supported 171,000 jobs, which translate to 1.1% of employment in 2019. And some of the interesting highlights, the industry, support the generation and collection of taxes to the tune of 121 billion rand. So we found these figures to be very interesting, which is pretty much a confirmation of what we want to know. But we just wanted to reconfirm again, based on the studies that we done in 2015, we felt that we need to reconfirm these figures to see if they are still relevant today.
It's a pretty significant impact that the industry does have on the South African economy. And I know you're focusing on what happened in 2019, but of course we know that come 2020 we had COVID. What sort of impact did the COVID crisis have on the oil industry, things like supply chains, if at all?
Yeah, so that's a very important question, because at the beginning of the hard lockdown back in 2020, we have seen that the industry was badly affected in such a way that the demand was destroyed. There was demand destruction. To an extent that we've seen the collapse of the sales of major petroleum products such as diesel and petrol. But we have since recovered, and the only product that seems to be lagging, which is directly linked to the tourism industry, is the jet fuel or aviation fuel. But obviously, we are working towards to the recovery of the economy in support of what the government is also calling on all of us to do. So we cannot use 2020 and 2021 as the benchmark. We need to strive towards bringing back the industry to 2019 levels and beyond. So we look at 2020 and 2021 as just an interim impact. Going forward, we want the industry to grow, to go beyond 2019 performance.
Yeah, you mentioned a very key word there, grow, speaking to growth. So what are the potential investment prospects in the sector? And given that financiers increasingly are keen to invest in sustainable technologies, does this mean South Africa will have to move away from fossil fuel-based technologies?
I think the most important word is just transition. As we are transitioning to the more a low carbon economy, we need also to make sure that, in the process, we don't let everything collapse. For example, the cars that are registered in South Africa, they are around about 12,000 motor vehicles that are registered. And based on the figures that have been circulated in the past, it takes several years for a car that is sold to be scrapped. So in other words, we still need to support these vehicles that are on the road for many, many years to come. And if we look at the the progress with regards to the transition into the new technologies, whether you're talking about EVs, you notice that in the case of South Africa or Africa as a whole, we are lagging far behind if you compare ourselves to Europe. And it means, therefore, there will still be a need for our products for many, many years to come. Probably by 2030, we'll still be requiring petrol-powered vehicles in South Africa. You can confirm this if you look at the independently published numbers by International Energy Agency. They do reflect that as much as like we're transitioning to net zero. You're going to see that, a lot of emerging economies, they will be slow in adopting the new technology.
Thank you very much, sir, for those insights. That was Avhapfani Tshifularo. He's the Executive Director at the South African Petroleum Industry Association. Market news coming up after a short break with Nastasia Arendse.